Hello everybody, welcome back to Invisible UX. In today's session, we're going to continue the series on Figma tutorials and focus on frames. Okay, so let's get to it. So frames. Frames are the equivalent of an artboard in Sketch, if you're familiar with Sketch. Or if you've worked with the Adobe Creative Suite, they would be like the canvas. So while you can put objects, and we'll get to objects in later videos, you can put objects kind of anywhere in the sort of design area here. Putting an object on a frame gives you more control of how it will look on the screens that you're creating as part of your projects. So let's talk about frame sizes and how you create a frame. So let's talk about how to create a frame. There's a couple different ways to do it. One way is to hover over your tools here, go to the drop down, and then click on frame, right? So you'll see little crosshairs. Now you can either just click once and that default frame size of 100 by 100, which shows up in your design menu on the right side here, will be created. You can also click and drag for a custom size, okay? Now you might have seen a little preview to our alignment tutorial, but as you're drawing, there's an automatic snap feature within Figma. So it makes very high level alignments a little more simple. Okay, we'll get to that later. I don't want to give away too much of that, that session. Okay, so we talked about selecting frame, clicking or dragging. If you want a shortcut, instead of navigating to the menu bar every time, you can also hit F. So that's what I typically do. So if you, for example, are just in the kind of move or mouse pointer mode, hit F. The pointer goes from a cursor to the crosshair, and then you can create a frame from there. Okay, so that's great if you're just kind of in a conceptual phase. You want to create a quick frame just to jot some ideas down on. But if you're creating work that's for a specific screen size, mobile versus desktop versus tablet, or even more specifically, iPhone versus Samsung, right? There are actually preset frames that you can select. So instead of going to the menu, I'm just going to hit F for frame. If you notice on the right-hand menu here, we've got all of our main categories. We've got phone, tablet, desktop, standard presentation sizes that are formatted to fit popular screen sizes, even for watches, right? So we can select any of these templates, and the actual screen size of that device will be created by default. And something else that Figma does that is quite handy is that it'll automatically name that frame the device that it's sized based on. So here we have iPhone 14. Let's just, for another example, if we want to collapse phone, go to desktop, we can go MacBook Pro 16, which is a fairly HD, fairly big laptop screen size. Click it. There we go. So just a pretty cool shortcut that Figma offers based on some of the more popular screen sizes. Now for simplicity, we'll get rid of the manual frames that we created. We'll also get rid of the desktop, so we're only looking at the iPhone 14 size. Okay, so what we want to dig into now are the frames attributes. What can we adjust? What kind of control do we have over it? Okay, so I've moved my little window to the left there. Now we're going to look into what kind of attributes we can control of the frame. So in our Figma overview video, we talked a little bit about the design, the prototype, and the inspect tabs. So now we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the design aspects. Okay, so for starters, we'll see that the top items are grayed out. That's because these deal with alignment of two or more objects. we only have one object and there's nothing to align it to, so those tools aren't able to be used. We'll dig into those at a later time. For frame, we can now go back and change that frame size. If we used the wrong size before, or if the device that we're designing to has changed, we have the frame's position. So if we change this to 200, it'll move within the design space, but it won't actually adjust the size of the frame. All right? We have the frame's orientation. We can go portrait or landscape. Okay? If you're not going for as precise of an adjustment, instead of actually typing in dimensions, you can simply hover over that box, select, hold down, and then shift the location. So looking further down, we have the width and height. So this deals with the actual size of the frame. If we want to adjust it, we can make it narrower, make it taller, but now it's no longer the iPhone 14, right? So it's a custom size. So if it's iPhone 14, with that frame drop down, we see iPhone 14 selected. If we change that size, it's now a custom size. Okay, so for now, let's change it back to iPhone 14 just for consistency. So the angle is the rotation of the frame. This is the corner radius. And then so by default, there's a single corner radius control for all 4 corners. If you want to have corners that have different radii, you can select this button and then independently control the look of that frame. So you can see the upper left corner has a radius while the rest of the corners do not. So clip content automatically clips content that falls outside of the frame's boundaries. Moving on down, auto layout is something that we'll get into much later. It's a fairly advanced tool, which is very useful, but we need to build a foundation of Figma first. Layout grid is similar. It's quite complicated. So we'll come back to that in a later session. If you do find these videos useful, please hit the like button, subscribe. It lets me know that I'm providing stuff that is helpful, and I love to know that I'm helping others out there. Thanks to everybody that has gotten back to me, reached out to me on LinkedIn, via email, or even in the comments in the YouTube videos. So really appreciate that. Until next time, take care.